Hi everyone, I'm Jordan French. Welcome to Propelify. Big shout out to Aaron Price and the team behind him, and our wonderful MC as well. Without delay, we have James Altucher. He's on screen. He's ready, ripe and ready to go. There you are, James. We'll get to you in just a second. But Julie Samuels, I'm gonna welcome you to the stage, and I wanted to grab a seat right there. Let me see. Can you all see James clearly? If I sit here, I'm gonna sit here. Julie. Is your mic hot?
Is my mic hot?
Okay.
My mic is hot. James, can you see us? Wait,
I can see you guys from my undisclosed bunker.
You're looking clandestine here, James, and we'll get to that in a second. But just to frame this a bit, it is a debate, which really, for Propelify's purposes, it's a friendly conversation. And just to bracket that, for those who are uninitiated, James wrote what I would call an incendiary article, ran in the New York Post, that declared that New York City is dead forever, and marshaled a number of arguments that way. He got a reply from none other than Jerry Seinfeld, a number of others who were irate at that. Julie is one of those who has some rebuttal, so that's what you'll hear. We are open audience.
I'm not as funny as Jerry Seinfeld.
Come again?
I'm not as funny as Jerry Seinfeld.
Well, luckily for us, James owns a comedy club that you should all go to. It's a historic building in New York City. I'm sure that'll come up as well, James. But enough from me. Again, Grit Daily and Jordan French, that's who I am, just monitoring this, and we'll jump right in. James, you wrote this seemingly incendiary piece, and just to repeat the title of it, New York City is dead forever. Just to lay some foundation, though, James, what did you mean by that?
Well, I wrote the article because, look, I've grown up and lived and worked around the New York City area all my life, or in New York City all my adult life. My kids are in New York City. I love the city, and I kept seeing problems that were getting bigger than the pandemic that people were in denial of. Everyone said, oh, once there's a vaccine, everything will be back to normal. Or once, Broadway opens again, everything will come back to normal. And that's just not true. And even after my article, people would say, oh, look, there's people sipping coffee in the streets. It's like Paris. New York City is back and well. They're not looking at the underlying financial and economic conditions where a city like New York City, needs to thrive. And I'm still worried. When you looked at if you watched the mayoral debates a few months ago, all of the candidates pretty much brought up the same issues that I did. And I spoke with several candidates, and actually wrote an article endorsing Eric Adams, who won the primary. And they all agree there's serious issues that need to be confronted. If we want New York City to continue to be great, we can't ignore these problems. Now, I don't know what the solutions are, which is why I was nervous when I wrote this article. I'm hoping maybe we could all, I think technologists will be the ones to find solutions, but it's a very difficult situation New York City has been facing.
Certainly you started a conversation. We were listening intently in the audience. It sounds like perhaps even a cheat sheet for the mayoral candidates. We inquiring minds want to know, and before I go to Julie, where are you exactly, James?
Well, right now, I'm just visiting Atlanta, Georgia. So else I'd be there.
And if you could share, we did have a chance to talk with Jay, your colleague earlier. You're there to play chess. Is that correct?
No, well, I mean a little bit, but also I'm just visiting.
Okay, great. Well, that might weave its way back in the conversation. But Julie, already some points that it sounds like mayors are repeating, so they might be true. They're using James' points from the article. Your response?
Well, first of all, I would take a step back and say if anyone has been in New York City in the past few weeks, few months, it is incredibly vibrant right now. It feels very alive. James, I actually live not far from your comedy club. I live in the neighborhood. And the restaurants are spilling into the streets. I'm going out almost every night. I'm meeting friends for lunch. My kids are in school every day. And New York really feels alive. And this other thing has started happening again. I don't know if it's happening to other folks, but I'm running into people. I'm bumping into people in different neighborhoods, in different parts of the city. And that, to me, has been like a real sign that things feel very alive. I would not disagree. I mean, I think, James, I think there's a lot we agree on. And I think we both love New York. I love New York. I was not born in New York, but I'm one of those people who was born to be a New Yorker, the kind of people who come to New York. And New York is a city of people who are constantly recreating it. And that's one of the things that make it amazing. But I just quickly want to say that while things feel very good right now, there are some underlying, there's some challenges and there are some opportunities. I'm optimistic about what we'll hopefully have a Mayor Adams to confront those, and maybe we can dig in on some of that, Jordan.
Okay, sounds like you agree on Mayor Adams. You heard earlier, right, James, that you supported his candidacy. Did I get that right? That fact right, James?
Yeah, Eric's a good friend. I wrote an article endorsing him, and
Julie,
I'm glad he won.
Yeah, and but Julie, we were again listening very closely. You said you don't disagree with James. So are you folding right now and saying that you?
Oh no!
With
When I say I don't listen, the city always has challenges. Running a city of 8 million people is really, can we swear here? Is really fucking hard, you know. And that people are worried and rightfully worried about issues around: is the subway functioning? What is our economic outlook? Safety is a huge concern, and we should worry about those things. But that does not mean New York City is dead. New York City is vibrant. And I had an amazing conversation with some friends yesterday about this who made this point so I'm stealing it from them, but some people have left, and maybe that's okay. And tourism is going to be a little bit slower to come back, which is not great for our economy. But maybe it is a time for New York and its government to focus on how to make the city work best for New Yorkers. Instead of the tourists, maybe instead of the commuters. How do we make New York work the best for the people who are there right now? And that's a challenge I want to take on. That's an amazing opportunity.
Well,
James.
Yes, with all of these, you have to, there's the visuals, which is, okay, New York City, people are going to restaurants are spilling over, but then there's the hard evidence that there are problems lying underneath, like thousands of restaurants and bars closed permanently during the pandemic. I mean, I'm in the bar/comedy club business in New York City, and I know the community. Restaurants and bars suffer. Thousands closed. Tens of thousands of small businesses closed in New York City. Hundreds of thousands of people went permanently unemployed from their jobs in New York City. I mean, there's a lot of pain and suffering that have happened. And, 330,000 people filed change of address requests, permanent ones, with the New York City Post Office last year. Will they come back? I don't know. If they don't usually file a change of address request if they're going to come back. Now, maybe that means New York City people will come in, but that hasn't really happened yet. And, the critical issue with the tourism is New York City makes money from their tourists. The sales taxes are a big part of New York City's revenues. Without revenues, if the tax base goes down from people leaving, if the taxes go down from no tourists, if the taxes go down because people stop leasing office space, and right now offices are only at 20% occupancy, that's a significant drop in revenues for a city that needs to support sanitation workers, healthcare workers, police, educators, hospitals, colleges, and so on. And if you can't support the services of the city and you have to tax more, fewer people will move to the city. More people who are part of the tax base will leave the city. You'll have to offer fewer services, and it'll be like this death spiral down. And I'm concerned no one has really addressed these issues. On top of it, crime is up 200%, depending on what metric you're using, from 2019, not even from 2020, from 2019. And it's just not a good situation. The reason I like Eric Adams as mayor is, at the very least, he will help solve some of these public safety issues, these crime issues. I mean, shootings are up incredibly. Murders of children are up huge from 2019. So these are all issues that I'm scared about, and I'm scared as a family member, as a business owner in New York City, and I don't know the solutions.
Well, listen,
if I may, Julie, and just a natural follow-up there, if people are leaving, James, where are they going?
Well, that's a great question, and I've been studying this a lot. Like, where are the change of address requests suggesting they're moving to? Well, Miami, they're moving to, Austin, Nashville, Asheville in North Carolina, Denver in Colorado, Atlanta, many cities. And in a general, this might be a good thing for the country as the talent and money of New York City flows around the country. It doesn't have to be one place for per industry now. So people from San Francisco also are leaving. People from LA are leaving. So the major urban areas, people from London are leaving. Major urban areas all over the world are going to second and third tier cities, and that could end up being a good thing. But again, it doesn't address New York City's issues, which is the focus of this.
Julie.
Yeah, well, I would say there's a couple things to unpack there. Let me just try and start. I'll probably miss some of them. But first of all, we are seeing people come back. Anecdotally, I have friends who thought they were permanently in Miami and are already back. Rents in Manhattan are back up to 2019 levels, which might be problematic for other reasons, but here we are. Brooklyn is booming. So commercial real estate numbers are back to 2019 levels. And especially because we're here talking about tech today at this conference, I'd also point out that even in April, May of 2020, when a lot of businesses, particularly in the financial industry, were leaving, tech was coming in. The largest employers, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, have all doubled down on New York City, both just before the pandemic, throughout it, and as of just a couple weeks ago when Google announced the purchase of St. John's Terminal. So at a minimum, at its most basic, it is clear that the city is going to change a little bit, that tech is resurgent, that tech is growing, and maybe some of the financial industries perhaps maybe are going to pull away a little bit. But that's a change. That is just breathing new life into the city, and I actually think it's incredibly optimistic. I am worried about the small businesses. I'm very worried about the restaurants and the bars and the cultural institutions. I'm worried about what's happening in the outer boroughs, where the economy isn't rebounding. The recovery is a little uneven. But that does not mean New York is dead. Those are challenges. And we have a new administration coming in at the city and a new administration coming in Albany. I'm really optimistic that we're going to come together and rebuild better than before.
Julie, though, it does sound like if you are conceding that you are concerned, just to repeat the words back to you, that small business, you're worried about small businesses. Some of the facts that James did articulate, are true. There were a number of restaurants and other establishments that did shut down. If we're in James' paradigm, though, where that's what he's referring to, and he can corroborate this, and it sounds like you are conceding that the part of New York, its heartbeat, is dead and perhaps being...
Well, no. Listen, one of the things that we've also seen is that rents during COVID went down in very popular neighborhoods, downtown, in the East Village in particular, and new restaurants are popping up. If we had been sitting down here in 2018 or 2019, I would have told you I was worried about running small businesses in New York. There are things that were challenges before COVID that I think got tougher during COVID. New York City, let me start by saying, New York City is not an easy place to live. It is an expensive place. It can be complicated, but it's also an amazing place. And that has not changed in the tiniest bit. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that it's like 100% perfect for every New Yorker, but it's messy. And it's always been messy. Like, that's part of what makes it great.
Yeah,
James.
but things aren't like how they've always been. It's not like, oh, this is just another problematic year in New York City. We just had an economic lockdown for an entire year. Office occupancy rates are still in the 20 percentiles as opposed to 98% in 2 years ago, in 2019. And I know there's all these numbers like, okay, real estate transactions someone said was at a 3-decade high this quarter, but that's because they were at a 3-decade low this time last year. Like, if you even it out, there's still, real estate is far from coming back. The unemployment rate is still at a huge, double-digit number compared to 3% in 2019. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to get up-to-date statistics every day, but definitely commercial real estate has a ways to go. Rentals in Manhattan have a ways to go. I agree. Brooklyn has survived really well, much better than I thought it would. So Manhattan is definitely though going to be an issue, and that's where the tax base is. And the real issue is, what will the taxes be next year? What will the tax revenues for New York City be in 2023? Because that's how you're going to know if they're going to need to raise taxes, which either encourages or discourages people and businesses to move here. That's how you're going to know how they're going to be able to pay for teachers and healthcare workers and firemen and public safety and so on. Crime continues to go up. So, but again, I'm hopeful that Mayor Adams
I don't think
will.
that's true. I don't think crime is continuing to go up. I actually think the figures I've seen are that it's plateauing, and in fact, crime in New York has gone up at a lesser rate than most other parts of the country during
That
this
could be
period.
compared to most other parts of the country, but I care about New York. I mean, and again, New York City has people. That's what we're talking about here. Whether or not it's this past weekend or this past 6 months, however you're measuring it, 21 kids, teenagers have been killed in shootings since the beginning of the year. Will that stop soon? I hope. Shootings in general are at like all-time highs in decades. So I don't know. Maybe this week or this past month things have gotten better, but it's still a worry. I mean, the NYPD, they're barely going to work. They're having problems with De Blasio that have been long term and exacerbated during the economic lockdown. Again, I'm hopeful Mayor Adams helps things, but so far there's no help.
Thanks, James. And Julie, I'm going to give you the last word, and then I'm going to go to a vote with the crowd by a round of applause after your last word to see who won this debate. Some good arguments marshaled on both sides. Julie, take us home.
Listen, first of all, I would never want to be sitting where James is and betting against New York City. So let me just start by saying that
I'm not betting against it. I want New York City to succeed.
I don't know. It doesn't actually sound like that all the time, but I trust you. I do. I mean, listen. New York City is a messy, beautiful, amazing place, and COVID was really hard. It was really hard for the whole world, and it was hard for New York. But there are amazing people I know in all 5 boroughs, all different ages, come from all different industries, who have come together and are working really, really hard to ensure that New York recovers. And I, any day of the week, would bet on those people, any day. And I have no doubt that New York City will continue to be the most dynamic, amazing city in the world.
And we'll call New Jersey for now Switzerland in this debate.
Look at the views behind us of New York City.
Well, arguably those are the views of New Jersey to New York City, Julie. But let's go to the crowd. Love participation at Propelify from the audience. Grit Daily, we love that too. For those who support James and agree that New York City is dead forever, please applaud, clap your hands. We got some.
Wait, that's someone there.
We got. I'm saying the audience can be virtual too. The audience can be virtual. All right. And then for Julie Samuels, TechNYC arguments that New York City is not dead forever.
It is an easy position to take.
James, this is what's known as a Sisyphean task at hand, of rolling the boulder uphill. That's all the time that we have. I really hope you enjoyed this talk.
Have time for a quick question?
Do we have time? Where is the question?
Right here. So quick questions. You're saying whether it's dead or not, who cares? The question is the worst behind us, or we've still got a lot of more pain to go before we turn the tide?
James?
For both of us.
And then we'll
I mean, I can say really, go, James, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll go after. Yeah.
No, it's okay. You go.
I was just going to say, obviously, there are questions about COVID that I can't answer. So putting that aside for a second, assuming that we continue to keep vaccination rates up and COVID rates manageable and kids are going to get vaccinated soon, I think the worst is behind us. I think we have the tools to deal with it. I think we have 2 new administrations coming in and a lot of people energized to help.
And James?
First off, thanks for inviting me to speak here about this. It's such an important issue. The answer is there's no way to know. we just simply don't know how many people are going to come back. Will office occupancy rates go from 20% back to 98%? Will tax revenues recover? Will bailouts from the federal government? I mean, New York City is going to be $100 billion in the hole or worse over the next year or two. Where are they going to get that money? And that counts the tax revenues they estimate, which are probably too high, too high of an estimate. So have businesses and restaurants stop closing? Are employees who left going to come back, to look for jobs, given that there's so much uncertainty about ongoing closures? Even schools are still debating closures given the new variants and so on. And that's after these 2 booster shots. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I hope the worst is over, but it's really unclear. Will crime decline? We don't know.
Thanks, James. I think do we have time for one more question? We do? Okay. Yep. Gentleman in the front row. Fire away.
This collapse in New York is why it's going to revive, because all the young people now can afford to come to New York and create a new life. They were actually left out. And lower rents, new opportunity, revival is all what's going to make New York the best city in the world. Thank you.
I could agree, but this reminds me of the 1970s. That's when a lot of young people and young artists moved to a bankrupt New York and revitalized it. But it took 3 decades. So nothing's going to happen next year. 2 of my children moved to New York as adults, and they're happy there, and I love it. But that we're talking like 2 or 3 decades of that type of solution.
That being shorter than forever, though, James, it sounds like you're conceding at least to Mashinsky's comment here. Big round of applause for James Altucher for joining us. James, we definitely are looking forward to the follow-up article, even if it comes in 20 or 30 years. And then big round of applause for our winner, Julie Samuels, TechNYC, and then New York Forever. It's another organization that she has. That's all time that we have. I'm Jordan French Coritelli. Back to our wonderful MC, Ms. Gonzalez. Take it away.